The chair will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to seal the minutes.
Motion been made. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Motion been made to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is officially adjourned.
I got to get a,
I now call the meeting of the Cranston City Council to order. Will the clerk please take the roll? Take the roll.
Here.
here.
Present. Present.
Present. Is there a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Motion made in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. At this time, I would like to ask all persons to shut off their cell phones. Thank you. Now we'll stand in for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public acknowledgements and commendations, are there any?
Councilman Santa Maria has one on the docket.
I do, Council President. Is Rachel here? Can I reserve the right if she comes later to hand the citation, Council President?
Sure. Rachel Bluestein, is that her name?
Yes.
Okay. Public hearings. Any member of the public would like to speak on any docketed item, please come forward, give your name and address for the record. And docketed items are limited to 4 minutes.
Sorry. Eric Weiner. I live at 56 Chestnut Hill Ave in Cranston. And I would like to speak to the changes recommended to the itinerant vendor ordinance.
Go ahead. Yep.
We all set?
Yes, we're all
Oh,
set.
sorry. It's all right. I know that there's some conversation about changing the itinerant food vendor laws for food trucks to require them to park 1,000 feet from any current competitive business. I'd like to quickly talk about the history of what my idea is and what I'm doing. I own a website called foodtrucksin.com. I started a business that I owned for 20 years, a limousine company that I built from one car up that I sold 3 years ago. And in the last 12 months, I've been building a website that lists every food truck in the country. I just finished a tour of food trucks in cities from Providence to Savannah, Georgia, and back. And I have lots of personal experience and evidence of knowing that food trucks represent the American dream right now. And it's a way for very small micro businesses to grow, not only their own businesses, but to also benefit a community. And one example that I'd like to give is the food truck Poco Loco, which started in Providence and opened a brick and mortar location in Cranston and now has a brick and mortar restaurant in Cranston. I know that one of the concerns is that bringing food trucks to a community hurts the existing businesses. And in cities all across this country, and there's a lot of evidence that shows that food trucks are small business owners that are committed to helping grow an area, and that brick and mortar restaurants are not hurt by their existence. The idea came to me after sitting and talking with Rich Lang, who owns Lang's Bolorama, of having a weekly event where food trucks would be parked on his property to help him drive summer business to Lang's Bolorama, where it's very slow, where they're losing money, where they'd like to have more summer business. They embraced the idea to the point where they were willing to shut their kitchen to bring these food trucks into the city. There are probably 25 food trucks that are prepared to pay a $250 a year fee to pay for a license to be itinerant food vendor in Cranston, which would also each pay their 1% meals tax that would go directly back to the city in exchange for being able to sell their food once a week at Lang's Bolorama and also be able to serve from their food trucks throughout the city. Since they've had that idea, this change to the ordinance has come up, which has basically said that they have to park within 1,000 feet of any food business, which is a lot of ambiguity, which means if a gas station is selling hot dogs, does that mean that a French food truck can't park within 1,000 feet of that gas station to sell food from the street from their truck? These food trucks are small businesses that grow. They often will rejuvenate areas of cities that are downtrodden. They will often look for areas to open brick and mortars, which is what a lot of their goals are. And there's a real opportunity for Cranston to have an opportunity for these trucks to come visit places like Lang's Bolorama or Fiddlesticks, places where there is no food service or there isn't this type of food service. There's a lot of evidence that people that are looking to go to a sit-down restaurant do not stop at a food truck instead. And these food truck events, when they're held and when trucks are parked together, actually generate a lot of new traffic into a city. And foot traffic of people to see areas. If you look at the area around Lang's Bolorama, there are at least 3 buildings that are either vacant for lease or for sale, that if you were to bring 2,000 or 3,000 people there on a Wednesday night, would be exposed to that area of Cranston that might never otherwise see it. So there are a number of people that own food trucks that are here that live in Cranston as well. And I would ask that the council looks for a compromise that both makes the brick and mortar restaurants comfortable with the idea of how food trucks can serve in the city, but not to shut the food trucks out of the city. My last point is that there's a lot of confusion about whether or not these food trucks would have to pay an additional fee above the $250 itinerant food vendor as being considered temporary structures to park on private property. There's a temporary structure, which is 5.76, that we've been told they'd have to pay a $100 fee for every 100 days as a temporary structure to be on private property. I'm sorry. I was told I only had 4 minutes, so I was speeding through. From my understanding, food trucks are not treated as temporary structures anywhere. They're vehicles that come in, they park for 2 to 3 hours, and then they leave. You know, asking them to pay a $250 a year fee plus $100 for every 100 days as a temporary structure seems very unreasonable. And then just lastly, I'd like to call your attention that 5.04.100 lists itinerant food vendor fees as being $250 for non-residents and $200 for residents, but 5.44.030 lists the fee as $125 for residents and $150 for non-residents. So the food trucks are looking to be part of the community and are looking for a way to do business in Cranston that supports their American dream, that also supports the city and does not put any of the brick and mortar restaurants that are here in jeopardy. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on any docket item?
Mr. Chairman.
Your name and address for the record,
My name is
please.
Kelly Coates. My address is 1414 Atwood Avenue, Johnston, Rhode Island. I also have an address at 1000 Chapel View Boulevard, Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm here to speak on 3 docketed items, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, the first of those items is I want to support Councilman Santa Maria's motion with respect to the food trucks. So I do represent the many, many restaurants that we lease to within the city. And I am totally in support of small business. There's nobody more pro-business in the city than I am. I respect the position you have on the council and the weighty concerns that you have on your shoulders. But with these regulations, I think that you have to be, very cautious On a food truck, who's supposed to provide the bathroom for the customers? Which other retail facility is supposed to give up their bathroom and have a non-paying customer come in and use it? When I build a shopping center, I have very careful review by the city of Cranston. They come in and look where my cars are going to park, where loading is going to happen, where people are going to walk to and from. And those public safety issues get reviewed by the police, the fire, and planning. Often they get reviewed by this council. And that doesn't occur with the food truck. If you, Councilman Santa Maria, open up a taco business and you do very well, what's to keep me from coming up and pulling my taco truck on the curb in front of your business and opening that? So yes, I'm in favor of the changes, Councilman, that you added to your bill. And I appreciate that you have to protect these small businessmen who stretch out, who they have the toughest time paying their fees, their taxes, and their licenses. But they said, I love Cranston, I take a risk, I'm going to invest in my city. And so I speak for them, and I think we have to take care of them first. I have a couple other docketed items. We're trying to close on the easement D, which is part of the Chapel View project. This is currently a detention basin, and it has a few parking spaces on it. The city has to have a right of first refusal. It's docketed tonight for resolution. We would like to close on that on July 2nd. And the only thing preventing us from closing that before State Properties Committee is the waiver of the city's first right of refusal. We are paying $250,000. We have a perpetual easement granted by the legislature for drainage. So if the city were buying that, they would have to buy it subject to all of my easements. It also is encumbered with wetlands. If the city were to buy it, it could have no beneficial use of the project. And lastly, I'm settling a lawsuit with the city, and that's the last piece of compensation. It would be difficult for the city to settle my lawsuit if they were to step into my shoes. We are also purchasing the training school, which was promised to go for sale and be on the tax rolls. And that is also before this commission. Technically, it was offered to the city on the 22nd of May, and by state law, if you don't respond within 30 days, they're free. However, this is an important development project, and the State Properties Committee wanted to hear from the city of Cranston. Our purchase price on that property is $4.5 million. We've also agreed at our expense to knock down the buildings. The demolition bill is estimated to be $1.1 million. We've also agreed to remove all the hazardous waste. Many of you are familiar with that property, not that you're alumni, but that it has pipes that run all through the ground, loaded with asbestos. At the Chapel View project in '95, we spent $750,000 removing asbestos, not from buildings, but from tunnels under the ground. And so that is the total compensation. Finally, in the purchase and sale agreement, which you would have to step into my shoes, I have to have a building up within 4 years, and if I do not, the property reverts to the state of Rhode Island. So you would be subject to the same limitations as I would. I have to knock down the property and have it all cleaned before we purchase. The deposit is $500,000, and again, the purchase price is $4.5. So I would respectfully request that you enable us to purchase that property, put it on the tax rolls. We're going to be shortly coming before this board to rezone the property for Chapel View Phase 2. And like on our regular Chapel View that pays millions of dollars in tax revenue, we hope we can do something with your help that will be a major tax rateable for the city. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Anybody else like to speak on any docketed item?
Hi, my name is Frank Mapes. I live at 262 South Clarendon here in Cranston. I'm the owner and operator of a food truck currently operating exclusively in Providence, but I live in Cranston, pay taxes in Cranston, own property in Cranston, rent my commissary space from a Cranston property owner. I shop almost exclusively for my products at a Cranston location. I employ Cranston residents who pay taxes. So I feel like I am adding something to the Cranston economy, and sure wish that I could actually operate my truck, at least part-time, in Cranston as well. For 5 years, I managed a restaurant that was one of Mr. Coates' properties, and never once in that 5 years did we feel threatened by itinerant vendors, trucks, special events that went on. We actually looked for anything happening in the Chapel View property that would bring foot traffic to the area. We wanted all the businesses in that particular development to take off. It was a long, slow process, and I understand what a difficult proposition it is to open a small business. I stated a couple of weeks ago before the licensing commission that in opening a small business like this, or in managing a small business, we looked at the synergy created by a variety of businesses, including food businesses. We never felt threatened by them, and we never wanted to threaten them. We just wanted to fit in and take our fair share of the pie. And we believe there's enough out there for everybody to succeed. I'd like to consider that in building my truck, I've had a lot of help from the food truck community, and I find them to be a respectful group of people, helpful. I've never seen them park in front of a restaurant and act as a predator. I've seen them follow the regulations that are laid out. They are not an unregulated bunch. They follow the rules that are put out there for them. And there are rules in Providence. We'd like to see reasonable legislation here in Cranston, nothing excessive, but certainly something that would make it fair for everybody. And I remember the comment from last time that if our food is good enough, we should be able to sell 1,000 feet away from a business. I think that if their food is good enough, they shouldn't be afraid of us 250 feet away, and I think that's a reasonable amount. I don't want to go tit for tat with all of the comments, but I just believe that legislation is fine, but it should be reasonable. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak on any docketed item?
My name is Steve Boyle. My address is 150 Midway Road, Cranston, Rhode Island. And I'm the president of the Cranston Chamber of Commerce, and we are here to speak in favor of the bill. For those who maybe misunderstand what my role is sometimes, I have members who I represent, and my members are the brick and mortar people in the city right now. And I come to a lot of these meetings and I see what's proposed and people trying to come in here. And I think one of the things that's ironic is that we kill drive-thrus in this city every time that a restaurant is proposed in those situations. So I understand that sometimes it's business friendly, and I know some of the articles have been distributed, but there's also an article with the Brown Herald. They're having a little bit of a problem on Thayer Street. It's not all hunky-dory. They're having a little bit of a problem. Now, it could be limited to one truck, but the fact is they're still having a problem. And the situation that I have is, and I look at people, they've sunk a lot of money into a particular location with the hopes that it's going to work, that it's going to be there, that they have to market it. They're paying a lot of taxes. And in today's world, when we're here as a business community and we're looking at pension reform and pension cuts and we need every dollar coming into the city, I think we have to stick with the brick and mortar people that are going to maximize the return to the city. Like I said, they're paying a small fee and they're paying the 1% back. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what a brick and mortar has to do with licensing, site plan review, parking. There's a tremendous amount of issues that go into opening a restaurant. Never mind with the fact that it's a very tough economy right now. So again, my members are the brick and mortar community and the restaurants, and we're here to support them tonight. And we urge passage of Mr. Santamaria's motion. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak on any docketed item?
My name is Karen Krinsky. I live at 86 Jackson Street in Warwick. I own Like No Other. It's a non-dairy soft serve ice cream truck. I'm in my 4th season. And pretty much in all 4 seasons, I've decided to basically only operate in Providence, with the exception of 1 year in Warwick. And the reason why I've continued in Providence and not in Warwick was the friendliness and openness, the ability to be able to operate in Providence, the events that I've done, the kinds of businesses that exist there for the kind of product that I currently sell. We support each other. So for example, as a strict vegetarian business, I like to recommend to people where they can eat, where they can get food at brick and mortar businesses. And so I have people coming from all over the state to my truck because you can't find my product anywhere else. And then they're spending their money at other locations that I've recommended to them. In fact, you can go to my website and I have a list of restaurants all over the state that people can find vegetarian options. So I do feel like there is a way to create more interest in brick and mortar businesses through food trucks. We're not out to take business away from them. I really feel like we can create a community. And I've been featured in a couple of national magazines. People would like me to franchise my business, and quite honestly, in Rhode Island, it makes it hard to open more locations because there are so many cities that are unfriendly towards food trucks. And I would like to expand and grow and be part of that community. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak on any docketed item?
Mr. President, my name is Bob Coleman. I live at 95 Alpine Estates Drive in Cranston, and I operate a business, Cranston Deli and Pub over on Park Avenue. Now, I respect the food service business in all manners, but I have to support Councilman Santa Maria in this, in that I know it would affect my business, which is, like most brick and mortar businesses, has its peak hours. And these are the peak hours that the trucks want to operate. I believe that was even referred to earlier in the conversations or debates. If I were to have, it has not affected me yet, but if I were to have a truck within 250 feet of my business, I would consider it completely unfair with the disproportionate amount of taxes that we do pay as a brick and mortar operation. So without having really studied the situation that much, I will admit that this is a not in my backyard situation for me, but I just wanted to get, as a taxpayer, my opinion. I do support the bill. Thank you.
My name is Nicole Anderson. I live at 144 Carpenter Street in Providence, and I do not own, but I do operate a coffee truck that is registered in the city of Cranston, but operates exclusively outside the city of Cranston, unfortunately. So I'd like to address a couple of things that people have said earlier. First of all, no one who runs a food truck in Rhode Island ever wants to see a brick and mortar business go out of business because the food truck parked next to it. No one wants to see any brick and mortar go out of business for any reason. Overwhelmingly, I have a coffee truck, so I'm not a chef, but overwhelmingly food trucks are that, food trucks, run by chefs who are friends with chefs. They all hang out together, they're all friends on Twitter and on Facebook, and they share each other's statuses and tweets incessantly. If you want to find out where to go to eat in a restaurant, ask a food truck owner. So the threat of food trucks to brick and mortar businesses is true. A truck could scare a restaurant, but it's not going to put a restaurant out of business. No sane taco truck owner is ever in 1 million years going to park in front of a taco restaurant and compete with them selling tacos. You want to go find people who are looking for street food, not people who are going to look to sit down in a nice air-conditioned place with a bathroom, which is another thing that we need to address. No one spends time at a food truck in the way they do in a restaurant. And so where do you go to the bathroom? The same place you go to the bathroom whenever you go to a park or out in the public to do kinds of things that you do when you're sort of out and about and recreating. Let's see. I understand that protecting small businesses is important, but it seems to be that over and over it sounds like truck owners are not also considered small businesses. And if we were all members of the Chamber of Commerce, would the president of the Chamber of Commerce be supporting this bill in the same way? We're not really inspired to become members because so far Cranston seems like an iffy place to do business, but we all want to do business here. Another thing that I want to address is this temporary structure permit that I'm not really clear on how the wording goes. As an itinerant food vendor, I have to pay a $250, or as a truck registered in Cranston, a $200 annual fee. And then I'm also considered a temporary structure where I have to pay another $100 for a 100-day permit. And I believe that the wording in the law is that I cannot have this permit more than 120 days out of any year, which really limits doing business in Cranston if that's enforced. So in Providence, where most of the food trucks operate, food truck owners do not have an ordinance that tells them how many feet they can or cannot be around an existing business. But because we're really cool people who like to hang around with really cool restaurant owners, we have a code of conduct that we regulate ourselves with, and we don't go within 200 feet. No one takes out a tape measure, and no one makes sure that it's 200 feet, but nobody wants any problems. We want people to enjoy food. Food is one thing that all human beings have in common. We all do it, whether we're Mother Teresa or Osama bin Laden, and we all like to celebrate things with food. Truck owners, brick and mortar owners, we all want to play together nicely. I think that if Cranston could adopt a more reasonable amount of feet where a truck could be within near a brick and mortar business, trucks would rush here and start doing business right away. I think that the citizens of Cranston would really love the opportunity to have food trucks in their neighborhoods. And no one wants to see a brick and mortar restaurant owner get upset for any reason. So if the food trucks go someplace that someone gets mad about, we're not going to feel welcome there. We're not going to want to stay there. I would never park my coffee truck in front of another coffee shop. It doesn't make any sense for my business or for the coffee shops. And it doesn't do any good for my own reputation. I hope to see you all at a coffee truck or a food truck soon. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Joe Agresti, 176 Florida Avenue in Cranston. I don't own a food truck, and I don't represent any businesses in Cranston. I just happen to love food. My wife and I go to Providence regularly to check out the new food trucks, and when we're there, we browse. She loves to shop, so we walk around and go in different shops. I think to not embrace what's going on in the United States now, we should be embracing these food trucks to come here. I think 1,000 feet, that's 333 yards. I can only think in terms of football fields, so that's like 3 football fields. So that seems pretty far. 100 yards seems fair. 250 feet, 300 feet, sorry, there goes my math. I think the food truck shouldn't complain about a $250 yearly fee when, brick and mortar businesses are paying in the thousands of dollars to operate here. So I think, as long as we can be civil and find that balance, whether it be 1,000 feet or 300 feet, I think, we need food trucks here because they help other retail businesses. So that's all. Thank you.
Any-
Hello, my name's Vinnie D'Onofrio, 1710 Playfield Pike, Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm the owner of 39 West. I support Richard Santa Maria. Like she was saying earlier, there's a $250 fee. We have a lot more fees that are involved. Sewer fees per unit. In our unit, we have 4 units. It's over $4,000 for just sewer fees. Whether or not you have a kitchen, a restroom, or no water, we still pay $4,000 a year. Plus tangible taxes, multiple licenses we have to pay for. I know the liquor license is exempt because the food trucks don't have that, but I definitely support Richard Santa Maria's build a 1,000-foot radius. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak on any docketed item?
Hello, Sal Sicoscio. I'm the city assessor, 869 Park Avenue. I'm here to talk about the ordinance for the tax board of review. I commend the changes that are being made. There were a couple of things in here that may cause some type of problems on my end with some of the state laws that we have. Number one is the requirement that there will only be 5 calendar meetings per month without approval. State law has specific time elements that I have to adhere by and the board has to adhere by once someone appeals. I have 20 days to answer. Once it goes to the board, they have 30 days to schedule a meeting, and then another 45 days to answer after that. So requiring permission for more than 5 meetings a month would cause some of these problems. If I go past those dates, I actually have to call the state, send a letter to them, and get permission from the Director of Administration. Another part in this is where it says the alternate member was going to be compensated at the same rate as a regular member. But then the very next section says that they're only going to be receiving $25 per meeting when they actually sit down. So there's some type of conflict in the wording of the ordinance at that point. Number 3, under that same section where it says that they have to meet for at least an hour. Well, they normally schedule 4 to 6 hearings every meeting they have. If these people don't show up, I can't see keeping them there for an hour twiddling their thumbs just because we have an ordinance that says they have to be there for an hour. They spend a lot of their own time reviewing all of these cases at home or at their business. They don't come in here cold and pick up the files, look at it, listen to the person, and try to give a response after that. They do spend a lot of time, a lot of their own time doing this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secoshio. Anybody else like to speak on any docketed item? Hearing none, we'll move on to resolutions. Resolution urging the General Assembly to introduce and pass legislation authorizing the City of Cranston to be exempt from the provisions of Rhode Island General Law 3-7-19, 2170 Broad Street.
Motion to approve.
In order to consider this passage this evening, we need to suspend the rules.
I withdraw my motion to approve. Motion to suspend the rules.
Second. Point of order. I heard a motion to pass. I didn't hear a second at this point. Is there a second?
So he just pulled it.
I withdrew my motion.
Thank you.
And I made another motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to suspend the rules.
Discussion.
Councilman Stichels?
This is in my ward, and it's a business on Broad Street in Patuxent Village that wishes to have a liquor license within, I don't remember how many feet, but too close to a church under state law. I personally don't have any problem with this, but I said to I think I said at the hearing, and I said to the people at the church that I wanted to see a letter from them indicating that they had no problem with it. And as yet, I haven't received anything from them one way or the other. I had a little discussion on the phone that, well, you know, what happens if, indicating that there's some doubt of whether they want this to happen. The deacon that I spoke with said, what happens if the business changes? You know, does the liquor license go with the new business? And then she also mentioned that another business on the street, very close, had asked permission for the same kind of permission and hadn't gotten it. So I would ask that this, that we not suspend I'd oppose suspending the rules, and I would ask that instead that we send this back to the Safety Services Committee until we find out where this, the church stands on it.
In order to suspend the rules, we have to have a roll call vote. So we're still in the discussion stage. Councilman Santamaria?
Council President, does the sponsor know that at this late stage of the General Assembly period, if we put this back in committee, it probably won't get passed before the end of the session, and it'll go to January? Just, you know, a dose of reality to the applicant. If we don't get this moving soon, you know, they're already doing the budget now, so you know, I know you want to help them out, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes, I know that, and I think you explained that very clearly to the business owner at the hearing that we had, but I just, you know, he hasn't contacted me. I don't know if he's contacted you. I don't think he's here this evening. We don't have a letter from the church, so I don't think we should be asking the General Assembly to do anything at this point.
Council President, can I ask another question?
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Santamaria.
Through the Council President to Pat, can we make a motion to recommit back into the committee?
Sure.
Without doing this suspension of the rules?
Yeah. Yes, you can do that. Councilman Aceto?
Yes, through the chair to Councilman Stichels, would you be comfortable with just sending it back to committee, but if the person doesn't get it, would you be comfortable with passing it pending that letter sent to the committee? You don't have the letter yet, correct?
Right.
So if we pass the resolution with the contingency that the letter be submitted either to you or the committee, this way here, we're not locking it down and waiting until January, but if you're comfortable waiting until January, it's your board, then, you know, I would support you in that manner too. I'm just trying to come up with a compromise here.
Yeah, I would, you know, having heard from no one on this, I think we'd have to wait. I would prefer waiting, yes, please.
Mr. President, does the business owner know that the letter hasn't come yet? Do you know, Steve?
No, I don't. I haven't spoken with the business owner.
Councilman Santamaria?
Motion to recommit.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor to suspend the rules until he withdraws his motion, and I withdraw my...
Do we make a motion?
I'll withdraw my motion to suspend the rules.
I withdraw my second, Mr. President.
Okay, the motion to suspend the rules has been withdrawn. The second's been withdrawn also?
So I'd like to make a motion to recommit to safety services and licenses.
Second.
Excuse me, Mr. Quinlan.
I'm not sure you have to, because it could just be introduced as new business and sent as safety services tonight.
So it'll go back to them next week.
As I understand, it didn't come out as an original resolution, then go to safety services, and then come back.
Let me answer it this way. We told the gentleman that he had to go through getting the letter from the church and the General Assembly process. He nodded his head so he understood what we were saying.
Right.
And Councilman Stichels has now told me he hasn't got a letter, so he either didn't understand or he needs a phone call, but it's really his burden to get the letter and to get the process going, to call the proper senators and reps, like Cilantro did. So,
right.
I mean, if the sponsor wants to put it back in the committee, I have no problem with it.
And the way to do that would be at the end of the meeting when we get to new business to move that resolution to committee that way.
Okay.
Next on the docket, a resolution authorizing the mayor to decline the right to purchase surplus state property from the state of Rhode Island, specifically Assessors Plat 14, lots 15 and 22 on Power Road.
Motion to approve.
Now, we need a motion to suspend the rules on this also.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion. Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion concerning this? Councilman Aceto.
Anytime we can take a piece of property and put it on the tax rolls, and it's really not hurting anybody with any objections, I think is a great thing for the city. So I know we've been accused of, not doing other things to generate more tax revenue, but in this particular case, and a couple of these, I think it's a good idea, and I'll be supporting this resolution.
Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, President Lenny. I've always had reservations when I have to cast a vote to suspend the rules, but if my colleague from Ward 6 supports this legislation, I will vote in the affirmative to suspend the rules.
Councilman Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, this, I've looked at this, and I know this area really well. This is the detention pond that Mr. Coates talked about, and the training school property all rolled into this one resolution. And it's a large piece of property, but you've got a lot of wetlands, and then you've got the training school property. When we can convert $4.5 million into taxable land, which it wouldn't be if the city owned it, I think it's certainly a good thing, and we know what Mr. Coates does with all the other properties that he's involved in, so I'm definitely in favor of this.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Resolution passes.
I thought that was, no, no.
That was
Motion
Oh,
to
the
pass
suspension, okay, the suspension
Motion
passes.
to pass the resolution.
second.
Motion made in second. Any discussion on the resolution? Councilman Stichels.
Why is this only coming before us now? Can anyone answer why?
Because of the 30-day rule, if I may answer, Council President. That 30-day rule, the city only has 30 days to respond to the offer. We have to respond to the state. We have a right of first refusal, and we're making our refusal now so that the purchase can go forward.
So 30 days ago, we didn't know that this was going to happen? Is that what you're saying?
We received, there's a letter, you'll see it in there, there's a letter from the state Department of Administration talking about disposition of surplus state property, and they're advising the city. It was May 22nd that the letter went out.
Okay.
And received in early June, so we're just taking care of it in the normal course. Obviously, if we wanted to buy it, then we would have to tonight say, yes, we want to buy this property, but I don't think we want to take over this property at this point.
Through the chair.
Yes.
That, when the letter came in from the Department of Transportation with regard to this, it was forwarded to the council and to members of the administration with the plans. So it was forwarded to you by me.
You're correct. I remember getting a copy of it.
Yeah, no, but I'm just wondering why it's only on the agenda at this point, that it didn't go to committee, and you answered that we have 30 days. We have to do something within 30 days, right? So here it is for us to do something.
Yes. Yeah, just like the other issues that sometimes they need to be expedited.
Any other discussion on the resolution? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Resolution passes. Report of committees, Ordinance Committee, Councilman Arquero.
Thank you, Council President. I guess to be camouflaged by the camera again, but resolution authorizing the city to consent to mutual aid agreement with the city of Warwick and the town of Johnston with respect to its police departments. This passed unanimously from Ordinance Committee. Entertaining motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion been made in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. The Finance Committee, Councilman Stichels.
We have the resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements as recommended by the assessor.
Motion to approve.
Motion been made to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Next, we have the tax interest waiver approvals as recommended by the city treasurer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe I responded to that last vote or was asked to respond to the last vote. So I will vote in the affirmative. Let the record note that. Thank you. Sorry, Chairman.
Will the clerk note that Councilman Aceto wasn't paying attention and forgot to vote?
Sorry, that was my fault, Councilman.
Councilman Stichels, could you repeat your last statement?
Yes. Next is the resolution authorizing tax interest waiver approvals as recommended by the city treasurer.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any discussion concerning this? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Finally, there's a resolution authorizing a tax interest waiver denial. There's one, as recommended by the city treasurer.
Motion to approve the denial.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay. Next is the ordinance for the Tax Assessment Board of Review. This is favorably recommended by the Finance Committee. Does anyone want to make a motion on this?
Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilman Santa Maria.
Thank you, Council President. I wasn't at the meeting because I'm not on this committee, but this has more amendments than the whole fiscal year budget had. What happened to this? There's 5 amendments on this ordinance. To the
Councilman
sponsor.
Stichels, could you respond to that?
Yep. I think there are really 3 amendments, or 4 amendments. You know, we had a lot of discussion, and the committee felt that it would be better to pay people an annual salary rather than a per-meeting salary. You know, there was a amendment on the paying the alternates per meeting. There was an amendment on that minutes should be kept, including the reasons for the denial of each appeal, and term limits on the assessment board. So there were 4 amendments.
And the committee, what was the vote to approve? Was it unanimous?
I know the amendment votes were split, and I don't remember if what the final approval was. Maybe someone else on the committee remembers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council President.
Any other discussion? Councilman Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to Councilman Stichels, to the sponsor. Does that address the issue of the $12.50 per year? Does that address the issue that the assessor brought up about when they need, they certainly wouldn't be paid more if they needed to be present at more than 5 meetings per month? In other words, if they had a deadline to meet and they had to meet an extra time, just want to make sure that, you know, I think that's a better way to handle it. They're only getting paid an annual stipend, but if they need to meet more, do you think there's any other issues there?
No, I think you're right. That what happened was that this was written for a per meeting payment, and then the committee switched it to an annual payment, and the rest of the resolution, the ordinance still reflects as if there was a per meeting payment.
But there still would be one requirement to get permission from the committee. Is that how I read it?
Yes. Well, it would be either the city council president or the finance committee. I mean, obviously that could be amended out by the council if people
I
felt
mean,
it should
yeah,
come out.
I don't think it's that burdensome, but I think I'm just curious. That's all I have.
Councilman Aceto.
Yes, I'd like to offer two amendments, if I may. On section, I guess, 4.5, there shall be no more than one meeting per day with a maximum of 25 per calendar year. I'd like to amend that to say as needed I guess, as needed. So that way there, that they're not limited to only meeting 25 times. Right now, the way it reads, it says that you can only meet 25 times per calendar year. With reassessment coming up, not that I want to go into discussion, but with reassessment coming up, it should be as needed, so that when they do revaluation, if they have to meet 30 times or 40 times, you know, they can meet that. And it's not going to make a difference because the salary is per year. So I don't want to limit the tax board of review to be in violation of the law. So if there's another way to do it, Mr. President, then maybe the solicitor suggests different language to unlimit the 25 meetings per year.
I would like to suggest, only suggest, based on the comments from Mr. Sakosha, who's very familiar with state law and the Tax Review Board, that we send this back to committee and make all amendments at that time, because there's a number of problems with this particular ordinance.
I withdraw my amendment and make a motion to recommit to committee.
I second to recommit, I'm sorry.
A motion's been made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Just if I could ask Mr. Quinlan, I think you've got a sense of the discussion here. If you could clean it up essentially for us and make it consistent.
Yes, I'll work on the amendments and get them back out to you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, there are 3 resolutions authorizing the issuance of bonds for various projects. These would finance projects that were authorized by the council in the most recent budget.
Motion to take as a block, all 3 resolutions.
Second.
Motion's been made to take as a block all 3 resolutions, and there's a second on that. Any discussion concerning the motion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Now we'll vote on the resolutions.
Motion to accept all 3 resolutions.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the resolutions? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Public Works Committee and Councilman Aceto.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Resolution 8S12-1, it has come to my attention through the city solicitor that he recommends that this go back to committee for further discussion.
There are a couple of changes, Council President, to the ordinance since first introduced. They've been characterized as Scrivener's errors or little tweaks, but I want to fully explain before the council, given the litigious nature of what's been happening so far with our various customers of the sewer system. But this can be explained by the Public Works Director or myself, the various changes, and it can go on for next month's full council. I met with him this morning and talked with him, and he's fine with that procedure.
Okay. Is there a motion to send it back to committee?
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Under discussion. Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Mr. President, the committee also discussed a request from Verizon and National Grid for joint pole location at Only Arnold Road. I don't know, but I think this is the first time a pole location has come to the full.
Yeah, I believe this was placed in error. I'll ask the clerk. Clerk, was this item placed in error?
That is correct. When I was transferring the items, that one got added in, and I didn't catch it till after the docket had been posted.
Okay, so there won't be any action on that.
The council does not
Thank you.
react on these.
All right, Councilman Santa Maria, Safety Services Committee.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Thank you, Council President, I'm sorry. 513-1, ordinance and amendment of Title V of the Code of the City of Cranston, titled Business Licenses, Tobacco License Fee. Committee has met and recommends approval.
Point of order?
Motion.
Point of order, Council President?
Yes, Councilman Arquette.
There's an error in the docket, Safety Service and License Committee, on the agenda. I believe Fusion was forwarded without recommendation. It doesn't specify as such. So I'd just like to make that notation and correction when we get to that point.
When you get to that point, Councilman Arquette, you can make your point of order.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion concerning the ordinance?
Motion to approve.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Councilman Santa Maria?
Thank you, Council President. I'm just a little concerned, again, for the mom and pops and the small operations that sell tobacco. $50 doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, but to them, it is a lot of money. The big conglomerates that sell cigarettes, this is a drop in the bucket. We've tried this before, and under the guise of it stops kids from smoking. It doesn't stop kids from smoking. It doesn't stop people from smoking. So I have some reservations about raising the fee on people who are already struggling, small businesses. Thank you, Council President.
Councilman Stichels.
Just to note that we did vote for this as part of the budget, that we increased the line item for business licenses and then spent it. So it's part of the budget, and we have, as a council, approved this.
Councilman Aceto.
Thank you, Mr. President. To Councilman San Maria, I understand your concerns. However, if you look at that industry and you look at, well, I guess it's relevant. It might not be relevant, but you look at violations of selling cigarettes to minors and whatnot. Statistics will show you that it's the small business that is in violation overwhelmingly more than 50% of the time when it comes to selling cigarettes to minors, as opposed to the major corporations who have training programs that are open to everybody. So just, for the record, and I think if they have the right to sell, it's an equal license. Big chains that have 5 or 6 locations in the city have to pay that 5 or 6 times, not just one. So, from a burden, it's just as bad to the big corporations as it is to the mom and pop.
Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, President Lanning. Through the chair to the sponsor of the legislation, Councilman Stichels, just to inform the general public, you want to increase the license fee from what amount currently to what's the increase?
From 100 to 150.
100 to 150, and do we have an estimate of what that would generate?
There are about 90 licenses, so $50 times 90 is $4,500.
And your comment was it's already been assessed in the budget, that amount has already been incorporated in our budget, is that correct?
Correct.
So we need to pass this?
Correct.
All right, thank you, Councilman Stichels.
Any other discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Reluctantly, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion of the ordinance passes.
Oh, sorry. Am I late enough? Thank you, Council President. 513-2, ordinance amendment of Title V of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Business License Regulations, Itinerant Food Vendor License Radius. The committee has met and recommended passage.
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion? Councilman Stichels.
Yes, I attended the hearing, and I've listened tonight to the comments, and I am definitely in favor of some type of regulation to protect brick and mortar businesses from the possible poaching by food trucks. So I understand that concern. I don't think it's fair to just say, oh, it won't happen. But I also think 1,000 feet is a long way, as somebody pointed out, 3 football fields. So picture yourself at Cranston Stadium, and at one end of the field, and that you'd have to go 3 lengths to get to where the food truck wouldn't be interfering with the restaurant. So I would make an amendment. I would propose an amendment to on line 26 to change the number 1,000 to 500.
That's what I was thinking.
Amendment has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Amendment been second. Under discussion. Councilman Santa Maria.
Thank you, Council President. With all due respect to Councilman Stichels, right now, flower vendors have a 1,000-foot radius. It's not working for them at 1,000 feet. As I told you in committee, the day after Mother's Day, I got phone calls from practically every flower shop in the city saying that the itinerant vendors were selling flowers for $1 a piece, hurting their business. And that's with a 1,000-foot radius. Again, a 1,000-foot radius, I think, is a good standard because, like you said just now, they say it won't happen, but it can happen. They can put their itinerant food truck right on the curb, in the middle of the street, and hurt these businesses. And I know for a fact, I have many businesses in Ward 5, as we all know. We have the best restaurants in town, bar none. They're hurting. I've talked to them. They're hurting. They're just getting by. This will hurt them more. I think 1,000 feet is more than fair. I mean, you make it sound like it's in Seattle, Washington. It's not. Again, they're saying they have good food trucks. I don't doubt that. I'm not here to hurt them. I frequent a food truck in Providence, as Ron probably knows. He sees me there every day. I like their French fries and I like their hot dogs. I like their hamburgers. But I also know that if they parked in front of Eddie's and Sons would probably complain. And they would have every right to. Because when you walk to the restaurant and you get intercepted by a food truck, you're not going to go into the restaurant because you've already eaten. You're not hungry anymore. Unless you really want to go to that restaurant, you'll go around the food truck. But I think it's more than fair, and I think it's unfair if you cut down for itinerant food vendors and keep the flower vendors at 1,000. It's not working for the flower vendors now. So I won't be supporting this amendment.
Councilwoman Lee.
I just to comment on Councilman Santa Maria's concern about the flower vendors being similar to the food trucks. I don't think it's this apples to apples situation because there isn't like a taco day. There isn't a day like Mother's Day or something like that where you really are targeting that one day for selling the food. So I find that the 1,000 feet seems like a very long distance, so I support the 500 feet. Seems like a compromise, because I think 200 feet you could be just within eyesight and of the restaurant. So I'm going to support the amendment.
Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, President Lanny. With all due respect to my colleague from Ward 1, and I understand his position, in lieu of the testimony we heard this evening from a number of restaurant owners and business establishments who profess that there is difficult economic times and in competition with vendors who have very little overhead pertaining to a restaurant who has, you heard, sewer fees, utility fees, and numerous other costs to run that establishment. I can't support this amendment, so I'll be voting against this amendment.
Any other discussion? Councilman Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. I've listened to the hearings at the committee meetings and tonight as well, and a couple of things that I've noticed. When some of the people discussed Providence, and there were a tremendous amount of trucks in Providence, but Providence is a different city. It's bigger, it's spread out, there's more neighborhoods that may not have restaurants. I mean, Cranston is really full of restaurants. We have a ton. And I think that 1,000 feet is not as far as you might think. I always think in my ward in Garden City, from Newport Creamery to Saconaset Crossroad, I'm sure is 1,000 feet or less. I mean, you can get pretty close, 500 feet. You're not going to be very far from some of these places. And a couple of things that were mentioned in the committee meeting about Hope Highlands, about maybe being near the ball fields. But it was pointed out to me that we have youth organizations that have the concessions at Cranston Stadium and at Hope Highlands, and they depend on the revenue from their concessions to help support those youth organizations. So, and they're nonprofit, and it helps the community, helps the kids in the city. So I think we have a balance. We have to balance the different competing interests. And our restaurants pay a lot in meals tax. I don't know how much we receive from the itinerant vendors in the meals tax to the city, but I asked Mr. Strom earlier. He really didn't know if he could segregate that number. But I think that we need to support the businesses that spend the thousands and thousands of dollars. And I don't think this precludes the itinerant vendors from getting onto certain areas. It's certainly 1,000 feet. Certainly still gives you an opportunity to sell your product. And there's also an exemption, I believe, under our ordinances that allows them to work on private property if they've been invited. So they do have the ability to operate on private property, which I believe even Garden City would be considered as private property, and they could invite them if they so desired. So could Lang's Bowl-O-Rama. You still would have to get the permit, I believe, and I don't think $200 or $300 is an awful lot of money for a 4 or 5 month license. It's a lot cheaper than rent, and not having to go through all the inspections that the other bricks and mortar restaurants have to do. So I'm not going to support the amendment. I think 1,000 feet is a proper dimension.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
This is on the amendment, correct?
On the amendment.
The amendment. Yes?
Yes?
No.
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 No. Amendment's defeated. Councilman Aceto?
Yes, on the main motion, Mr. President, some things were brought up in the public hearing section as far as if they have a license for a truck, do they also have to get a temporary structure license? Can we get a ruling on that? Or Chairman Santa Maria, if you could answer that question.
Councilman Santa Maria?
Thank you, Council President. Right now, itinerant food vendors aren't the only ones who would have to pay a temporary structural license. Businesses throughout the city have to pay temporary structural licenses now for tents, anything that's temporary structure. The clerk has contacted Senator Miller, who had brought up some points about it, that they do have to apply for a temporary structural license because they have a temporary structure. They're not going to be there forever.
Councilman Aceto.
Yes, to the city solicitor here, can I address that question to him or to our attorney?
Well, why don't you address it to both of them? They both give
Okay,
you
I
their
shall
own-
address it to both of them.
My impression is that they do.
Based on?
The current city code.
Can you be more?
It's 100, I just looked, it was 125 for a resident, 150 for a non-resident, plus the temporary structure fee, I believe. Believe it or not, I mean, I thank the council because the laptop is great, but it doesn't quite work as fast as I'd like, so I'm going to have to get an iPad or something like that. I'll get up the code. Yeah. I'm looking up to confirm the fact that the temporary structure definition in our code also includes motor vehicles. And that's in 15.32.010. I believe. If that's not it, I believe the gist of it is that the structure is defined as a movable automobile, which by definition it is.
Mr. President, could I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead.
To the solicitor, this wouldn't preclude somebody like with a coffee truck, if they had permission from the owner of a bar to serve coffee to patrons coming out, they could, with the owner's permission, serve. Is that correct, or is that not correct? I mean, it's the same thing.
You know, I don't want to get into all the nuances of it because clearly I don't have a vote. But, you know, let's say, for example, if you are Mario's whatever and you give your friend permission to be on your property and then your property is within 1,000 foot of someone else's property, does that run afoul of the ordinance? I think it does.
Councilman Santa Maria?
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Cedar, you're running into the fact that some people are going to have to pay temporary structural license and some aren't. Everyone along the feast route pays temporary structure when they put up a tent. And with the fireworks ordinance, we did the same thing. We told them they had to rent a place and have a permanent structure, even if it was seasonal. So I think we've always had this for temporary structures, temporary structure. This is, unless you take the wheels off these trucks, they're temporary structures. And the only, Madam Clerk, when she sent the letter, said private property owner with a letter to the council can have a temporary structure a la the Feast Society, which has a sausage truck. And they pay a temporary license fee to have that sausage truck there. I don't want to start including the itinerant food vendors in a certain caste system. I think we all pay the same, or we all don't pay the same. But I just don't want us to run down that road.
Councilwoman Lee.
I noticed a bunch of, neighbors and who use the food trucks as a catering service and for an event or something. And does that then need to get a temporary structure permit? I know they're chatting, but.
You posing that question to one of our attorneys?
If a neighbor or somebody's having a graduation party and they invite a food truck to serve at that event, it's great because it's clean, it's all, very little setup, it's quick and easy. Is that considered temporary structure? And then does that, homeowner need to get a permit?
I think under that scenario, it's more like a caterer that comes to your house. I don't think that has to do with commerce.
So why would it be different for a business that wants to add a little extra to an event, but they don't serve coffee? They have the coffee truck instead come up to serve for that event. If it's something they don't specialize in, like a dessert or something does that be considered different?
Well, I think the difference in your hypothetical is, one, you're selling to the public, and two, you're basically selling, or not selling
Okay.
to the
Oh, okay.
party, so to speak, the person who started the party. You're not
Okay.
accepting all comers, that type
Okay,
of
so
thing.
it's a private party.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
Councilman Stichels.
I'd like to propose another amendment based on a conversation that Senator Miller, who owns several restaurants, and Councilman Santa Maria and I had. And that was to allow a waiver of this provision if the businesses agreed that it was okay. So, if I could just finish. So, if somebody wanted to park a food truck in a certain spot and there were 5 restaurants within 1,000 feet, if the food truck owner received written permission from those 5 restaurants, then the food truck could park there, even though they were within 1,000 feet. So that's the idea of the amendment. I can say the wording here in a second. Councilman Santa Maria seems to be eager to comment.
Councilman Santa Maria?
I think it's already in there.
I'll second it just for discussion purposes.
For discussion, I think it's already in there that private,
It hasn't been, there's no motion or there's no second, so how can we?
check with the parliamentarian. I just want to speak.
Discuss it if there's no motion to move or no second?
Well,
I think Councilman Aceto seconded the motion.
For discussion purposes.
Did you say?
All right, okay, we graduated from parliamentary school. That's very good.
All right, now,
Councilman Stichels, we'd like to continue.
Yeah, I'll just read what I've written here. Section, would be a new item B in the amendment, in the ordinance, under A, and it would say B, Section 5.44.070A, which is that paragraph that talks about the 1,000 feet. That section shall not apply if all the established businesses licensed to sell food by the city within 1,000 feet indicate in writing that they have no objection to a specific itinerant food vendor, and then in parentheses with an S on the end, within 1,000 feet, period. This waiver may be revoked in writing upon 2 weeks' notice by an established business licensed by the city to sell food. So, as I mentioned before, if these established businesses say it's okay for a specific food vendor, okay, so that would mean if you say, okay, for a coffee truck, we can't have a taco truck showing up unless the businesses have written another letter, and that if there are problems, then those businesses with 2 weeks' notice can revoke this waiver. So that's my amendment.
Good second.
He was explaining it. I believe we're under discussion.
Is that in the form of an amendment?
Yes, it's a form of amendment.
An amendment's been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, under discussion, Councilman Santa Maria.
Thank you, Council President. This doesn't solve Councilman Favicchio's Garden City problem. This doesn't solve a problem if you have restaurants that don't own the property, that rent the property, such as 39 West. It's owned by, they rent it out. you'd have to get the property owner to agree to it too. There's too many moving parts now because even some leases have the fact that you can't have two restaurants in one strip mall. You're making too many moving parts. It's gonna cause more consternation between businesses. It's not gonna be a good thing. I think we should stick with the 1,000-foot radius. Again, we seem to be saying to the flower vendors, you have to stay 1,000 feet away, but nobody else does. We're again forming certain castes. I would urge my colleagues to vote against this also.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Councilman Favecchio.
Thank you, Council President. I mean, in theory, I think it sounds okay. What Councilman Stichels is proposing is not all that bad because it puts the burden on the itinerant vendors to have to go out and get approval from all of the restaurants in that 1,000-foot radius, which is not an easy task. But if they all agreed, that's fine. One thing you have to remember, though, is now someone has to draw that 1,000-foot radius and determine who is in there. And there's a cost to that, and that's going to create a little more bureaucracy just to do that because the city is going to have to certify who is in that radius, similar to zoning issues. So, I understand I think it's not the worst idea. I think it may not present problems in every area, but in the close areas such as in Ward 5, it may be impossible to get everyone to agree. So I'm not sure. I'm just not certain as to the mechanics of how you would go about this.
Councilman Arquette.
Thank you, Council President. I understand the intent of Councilman Stichels' amendment. However, I think the amendment is just going to complicate matters. It's just going to cause, I think, cogs in the wheel. If you have 4 restaurants on a location and a vendor has 3 out of 4, he'll probably go to that location and try to sell his goods. And at that point, one restaurant didn't make the agreement, will probably call the Cranston Police, and we have now our safety services personnel tied down over something frivolous, such as selling goods in a certain private area in less than 1,000 feet radius. So I think Councilman Stichels' amendment will complicate the bill. I think Councilman Santa Maria has a direct approach to the problem. I think the problem will be clear and there will be no misunderstandings. The police are not going to have to travel around 4 different establishments and say, are you the guy that didn't give such and such the agreement? So with all due respect to Councilman Stichels, I think he's getting a bit too intricate, and I think we need to keep it clear and concise, and I will not support his amendment, and I'll support the original bill. Thank you.
Councilwoman Lee.
Well, I kind of like the idea that you put the burden, as Councilman Favecchio said, on the actual food trucks to check in with the actual businesses that would be within the 1,000-foot radius. But I was wondering exactly how, does that permission last forever until the businesses would change, or is that, is that a 1 year sort of?
You're right.
Is it so maybe it is worthwhile for these businesses or the food trucks to come to agreement with a certain area that they wanted to serve to, I don't know. So in sort of hopes of helping the small businesses in some way, I think that's not a bad way. And food trucks are small businesses as well, so I'm in favor of it. Thanks.
Any other discussion? I'll put my 2 cents in. This all should have been discussed in committee. We're making up amendments as we go along here and discussing, turning them down. We haven't approved one of them yet. Let's move this on. No more discussion. Clerk, please take the roll on the amendment.
Yes?
Yes.
No.
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 Point of order.
Yes,
for the record, President, the only way we can end discussion is a motion to move the question. That's the procedure.
What are you suggesting?
No, I was just saying, the only way to end discussion is to motion to move the question. That's...
Oh, okay. The parliamentarian speaks again. Do I hear a motion to move the question?
No, it's done.
It's done, okay. Next time I'll remember. I thank you very much. Now we're going to vote on the ordinance. Clerk, please take the roll.
No?
No.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes. Councilor Santa Maria?
I'm sorry, Council President. Torg LLC DBA Elephant Room has been moved back to committee, if that's correct, so we can put that back on the Safety Services docket for next week. Correct?
All right, is there a motion to...
Councilman Stichels? Are we moving Torg LLC back to committee?
Yes, please.
Motion been made to move it back to committee. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Fusion El Rincon and Del Sabor LLC DBA Fusion. This is above the cap, requires council approval. It was forwarded to this council without recommendation.
So there's an error in
And
the
Council
agenda.
President, to add, I don't think the applicant is here.
Okay.
Can
Is
we
there a
make an
motion?
announcement to make sure?
Is the applicant here? I guess she's not. Is there a motion, Councilman Aceto?
I make a motion to,
Put it back in the committee.
at this point, deny.
It's been a few
I'll
times.
second.
Motion been made to deny, and there's a second on it. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. President, I think, if I recall correctly, this person wasn't at the last Safety Services meeting.
He was.
It's somewhat controversial because it's above the cap, and I wanted to speak to her to see about, seeing what her hours of operation would be so that we could perhaps offer a license, just for the hours of operation. If everybody chooses fine, I'll withdraw the motion, we send it back to committee, but at this point, she's missed, I think, 2 or 3 committee meetings, so.
Councilor Santa Maria?
Thank you, Council President. I agree with Councilman Aceto. We went over and above for this lady. We got a parking study done. We got a capacity study done. We even invited her to a Special Safety Services meeting, which she didn't show up for. So I don't know if there's even a wish to have this license or not. I don't see it by her non-attendance at the last 2 meetings.
Councilman Aceto?
Yes, again, to the 2 solicitors and to the city clerk, was she notified that she needed to appear at this meeting?
With regard to the last Safety Services meeting, the special meeting, she had been informed at the regular meeting it was going to be on that date. After that meeting, when she didn't attend, I tried contacting her, and Kimberly O'Brien in my office tried contacting her. Her mailbox was full. We could not get through. I tried her again this evening and couldn't get through when I noticed she wasn't here. So she was aware of these special meeting, and when she initially applied, she was told it would have to go to the full council. That's part of the process.
So, Mr. President, through you to the city solicitor, is it within our purview for the fact that she hasn't attended any meetings or anything to deny this license since it's above the cap?
Yep, it's on for a vote tonight. I
So
agree
it's
with
been out for
the history. I was here at the Special Safety Services meeting.
Okay.
I think the committee waited 15 to 20 minutes for her to arrive. She did not.
Do we have a motion on the floor, Council President?
Yes, motion.
There's a motion to deny, and there's a second. We're under discussion. Any other discussion concerning this? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the vote on the motion to deny.
Yes.
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 I have no further items on my agenda. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Santa Maria. On deck, Councilwoman Sarah Lee. Claims Committee.
I'm just reporting the settled claims for this month, where 2 fire mailboxes at $50 apiece, and tire damage, $186.73, and sign damage for $2,719. And that is all.
Is there a motion?
Motion? No, there's no motion needed.
No motion on this,
I
okay.
just have a question.
Councilman Aceto.
Were the mailboxes from the winter, or was that something new that they got hit recently?
They were from the winter.
Thank you.
Councilman Santa Maria.
Council President, since it doesn't look like Rachel is going to show up to get her citation, may I just say a few words about her award?
Yes, since the Claims Committee meeting is essentially over with, and before we start public hearings, I will allow you to do that.
Thank you. Just want to put a shout out to Rachel Bluestein. She's a 6th grader at Woodridge Elementary School, and she won the Rhode Island Art Educators Association's flag drawing contest. There was a citation here for her. If she's watching on TV, just want to say congratulations, and we're very proud of you as a council. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, now we go into public hearings. Anybody from the public like to speak on any item, docketed or undocketed?
Mr. President, members of the council, Paul Valletta, President of the Cranston Firefighters, Local 1363. I just wanted to rise and thank the city administration and the fire chief for a position they took on an issue 3 weeks ago that just cropped up, and I wanted the council to be aware of it. Everyone knows about what's going on in central Coventry because people don't want to pay their taxes. They had to close 3 of their 5 fire stations. And what their plan is to use surrounding cities and towns for their fire service. 3 weeks ago, the Cranston Fire Department popped up on their dispatch cards, an engine, a ladder, and a chief. And we started getting responses, dispatches to central Coventry. Now, we went when we're dispatched, but when we looked into it, when the fire chief looked into it, the town of Coventry, or central Coventry specific, had put Cranston fire apparatus on their dispatch sheets without even asking the city of Cranston if they'd come into their town to do that. So I want to thank the administration, and I want to thank the fire chief for taking the stance that we weren't going to send our apparatus in Western Coventry to central Coventry to cover their city and leave the citizens of Western Cranston with no fire coverage. When we send an engine, a ladder, and a rescue that covers Western Cranston, the next due fire apparatus to that end of the city takes 12 to 15 minutes to get there. If it's a rescue run, if someone's had a heart attack, 12 to 15 minutes isn't going to do it. And if it's a fire, we're going to lose the house in 12 to 15 minutes. So again, I thank them for taking the stance. They did tell them if there's a fire in central Coventry or a rescue run that they need us for, of course we'll go. But we're not going to be doing automatic mutual aid, and that's what they wanted us to do. Right now, we're under the mutual aid agreement, and that's if they have an incident, we go. But they used automatic mutual aid, which sent us to different parts of central Coventry when there wasn't even an incident, just a reported incident. So again, I think the council should be aware of that, especially the at-large council people and the council people that cover Western Cranston. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak on any docketed or undocketed item? All right, no one's coming forward. Okay, the public hearing section is closed. Election of city officers. There are no election of city officers this evening, am I correct? Report of city officers. Are there any reports?
I have none.
None. Executive Communications, report on the hiring of special counsel. Does the administration have anything to report?
Yes, Council President, we have several requests for continuation of service in the Cranston Fire Department. Cranston Fire Department Chief William McKenna has requested continuation of service. Chief McKenna has met all the necessary requirements. We urge your approval.
Motion to approve?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilwoman Lee?
Yes.
Council Stichels? Council Marquardt?
Yes.
Council Lucido?
Yes.
Council San
Yes.
Council Vecchio?
Yes.
Councilman Quinn.
Yes.
Cranston Fire Department Captain Paul Valletta has requested a continuation of service. Captain Valletta has met all the necessary requirements. We urge your approval.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Thank God. Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Cranston Fire Department Lieutenant Thomas Mazzoni has requested a continuation of service. Lieutenant Mazzoni has met all the necessary requirements. We urge your approval.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Cranston Fire Department Private Stephen Croft has requested continuation of service. Private Croft has met all the necessary requirements. We urge your approval.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Request to be placed on pension roll, Lieutenant Kevin Hodnett. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I believe administration was requesting that be continued to the next council meeting.
Is that correct, Mr. Cordy? All right. We withdraw the motions.
Well, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Second?
All right. The claim settled by the solicitor, that's for your information only. On the Council President Communications, the only thing I can say is it's been a pleasure working with this entire council. Unlike some of the councils that I've been on in the past, we seem to work very well together. And that's to your credit as individuals. We've put in party politics aside, and we work for what's best for the city. I thank everybody here for doing their job and supporting my leadership. Councilmember Communications, Councilman Stichels.
I've had a continuing problem with cars parking on the lawn at Parkview Middle School when people are parking for athletic events at the school. I just would like a report from the administration on what kind of enforcement that they're doing, and whether the recreation department, when they schedule the fields, tell people that they can't just park wherever the heck they want to.
Okay, any discussion concerning that from the administration?
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Stichels, to address the concern regarding Parkview Middle School, not only has the administration been on top of the Department of Recreation to remind the Little Leagues and other participants at the Parkview fields not to park their cars there, but we have sent the police to also speak to them to get them to cooperate. I mean, I know it has happened since then. The best thing that we can do right now is try to catch these people when they do it. From speaking to Major Shaffron, they have gone out there a couple of times. They haven't cited people or ticketed people, because when they do show, people have moved their cars. So we've given them an opportunity to avoid quite a hefty ticket. What we are probably going to do is talk to the league again to, let them self-police. And if we see that we're not getting cooperation, we're going to have to drop the hammer on them. But, we take into consideration that some of these people that are parking are the very same people who are there to watch their children. And yes, are they doing something wrong? Yes, they shouldn't be parking like that. But, it's within our discretion to enforce there, and the tactic that we've decided to take is to allow the people to move their car. However, with that being said, due to the continuing issue, I think we're going to take the next step, which is talk to them one more time and let them know that there's not going to be any more free passes, and we will start ticketing.
Councilman Stichels.
Well, I agree with that approach, except that was what we did last year.
I'm sorry?
That was what we did last year, and then this year, the problem comes up. So it's just like CVS and Stop and Shop and Walgreens and Sovereign not shoveling their sidewalks when it snows. It just gets incredibly annoying when I get the phone call, then I call into the office, then we go out and talk nice with people, we get the cars off. Next year, we're going to go through the same thing. So I think the administration has to come up with a method of stopping this from happening at the beginning of the season, not after I start getting the phone calls and I bother you and waste your time with it. So hopefully you can do that with the Recreation Department. The other item that I had, I don't know, can we go to the next item? And
Unless
want to
Mr.
talk about
Lopez
this?
wants to respond to your last comments.
Councilman, just to be clear, we do meet, and we did meet this year again with the leagues to let them know that they shouldn't be doing that. And I think, if you recall, during the beginning of the year, we did see some effect. And then the other thing too, Councilman, is believe me, I understand it's frustrating dealing with the issue year in and year out, but don't forget that there's new parents because, kids move into the league, move out into the neighborhood. So there's a lot of variables too. Believe me, I'm not excusing what these people are doing, but, I would rather err on the side of the people in this case who, they're there to enjoy their children. And again, like I said, I'm not advocating or defending what they're doing, but I think that the approach that we've been taking is prudent, and we are prepared to escalate to full ticketing.
Well, what's the Recreation Department going to do differently next year to make sure this doesn't happen?
Probably the same thing we're doing this year, Councilman, because, look, we can talk to people and let them know what's happening, and people, they're going to do what they're going to do. But, again, it may not be the same people. We don't know if these people that are doing this were there last year. Do they understand? Do they know? So that's why we give them the talk at the beginning of the season. And, when there's an issue, we go out there again and we remind them. Again, we are prepared to move on to the next stage of ticketing. So, again, I understand it's frustrating that we have to deal with this year in and year out, but in this particular case, I would rather err on the side of giving the people a break than, slamming them with a costly ticket.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The other issue has to do with rat control. I was approached by a constituent who said that she called on June 5th to report that there were rats in her neighborhood, and she was told she would have to wait until July 16th that's 6 weeks. That was the first available date for the rat control folks to go out and deal with her problem. So I'm wondering what's happening based on that. We were told in the budget hearings that new people were being trained, that essentially the situation was under control, and the council then added $20,000 to the budget, which I understand doesn't start until July 1st, but added $20,000 to the budget for rat control. And here we have someone who's waiting 6 weeks while the rats are cheerfully breeding.
Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Stichels, to address this issue, if you recall in the email, the constituent had claimed that she called the mayor's office. In fact, she had not called the mayor's office. She had called the Public Works department downstairs, which is the appropriate way to address these issues. However, when a constituent calls and tries to schedule these appointments, the person downstairs is working off a master calendar. So they literally are trying to slot people as best as they can according to a first come, first served basis. What ends up happening is we end up reviewing the plans and the calls and the appointments. And when we see that there's a backlog, what we start doing is analyzing where the calls are coming from, what are the targeted areas or the areas that we need to target in response to the calls. And then this fiscal year, what we've done is we've brought in third-party outside people to kill that backlog. This particular constituent may have called right after we did that initial attack or abatement of the backlog. So I can tell you that as a matter of course, she probably was giving us a date that was 4, 5, 6 weeks out. But I can tell you that not only has her date been moved up, but I believe she might have already been completed as of today. As far as the additional funds, as you pointed out, those funds are not available to us until July 1st when the new fiscal year begins. And in anticipation of that, Director Cordy and the administration with Director Mason have already booked the third-party vendor to come in that first week of July and take care of the backlog of calls that we've gotten. So we are working within the parameters that we have in terms of budget and personnel to try to deal with the backlog. And just to clarify a situation with the additional people that were trained, I just want to be clear that we have one person who is certified to do the initial baiting and inspection. The people who went in for the additional training to be able, it was so that they could be able to rebait the property. So our guy will go out, or the third-party vendor will go out, do the inspection, bait if necessary. The additional bodies that we have trained will go back and service those particular traps, because that's where we were falling down in the past. We were doing okay getting out there to target the initial call, but with the war against rats, you've got to be consistent and keep on monitoring those boxes. And that's where I think, Councilman, you'll see the difference in improved response to the rat problem with the additional personnel to rebait. So we're attacking it on two fronts. We're attacking it with the initial phase of getting rid of the backlog with the additional third-party vendor or external vendor, in addition to our baiting guy. And then the follow-up, which is critical, is going to be handled by the additional people that were trained.
What, all right, thank you for, I didn't understand there were two levels of service. Thank you. What happened with the idea of when Councilman Arquette and I met with you and the Public Works Director, one of our suggestions was to use the mayor's annual tax letter to educate people on proper disposal of trash. And I noticed that, once again, the annual letter was blank on the back.
Councilman, I accept full responsibility for that oversight. In my hectic schedule and flurry to get other things done, I quite frankly just didn't get it done, and that's just squarely on my shoulders, Councilman.
Well, can you put a notation in your calendar for next May? You know, put something on the back of mayor's tax letter to educate the public?
Believe me, it was there, Councilman. I have a sticky, and it just in the craziness of things, I just forgot to follow up, Councilman. So, but I will do better next year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Councilman Arquette?
Thank you, President. A couple of things. One is on the agenda. One is just developed tonight, but this is the second council meeting that I'm hidden from the camera. Now, I don't know if it's because of my looks and I may break the camera, but if that camera should be positioned in another area, so at least I can get on camera. So we need to address that. But what's on the docket was pertaining to Councilman Stichels' response time with the administration. On 5/13/13, a constituent contacted me, lives on Orsdale Road, who evidently in the wintertime, the snowplow ruined her curb. And she has a curb that is not, it's kind of out of the ordinary. It's made of cobblestone. I responded on 5/15/13. At that point, I contacted necessary channels. I could not call Mr. Corso, the highway guy. I'm forbidden. So I did the Marissa Campasani and Carlos Lopez email. I received an email on 5/29/13 from the constituent saying she had not been contacted by the administration at that time. Second email to the administration on 5/29/13. By 6/10/13, constituent in question had not been contacted by the administration. All she wanted was someone from Highway Department to look at the damage, assess the damage, and give her a basically a ballpark figure on when that would be addressed. But if our city is running to the point where a constituent contacts his or her councilman on 5/13, doesn't get a phone call from the administration 4 weeks later, we need to address this.
Can you repeat the address, please?
Excuse me?
Can you give me the address?
I have everything. You have the emails. I mean, I don't want to bring it, for her sake, I don't want to do that at this time. I will do it off camera.
Oh, sure. I have your folder here with every constituent request that you've sent since March, so we can go over that.
But I have it all documented here.
Okay, we do too, so
Okay.
we'll have to check on that.
I'm glad you do.
Was that all, Councilman
So
Arquette?
basically, Mr. Lopez, just so you and I can sit down and we can go over the points on this, I'd love to do that.
Mi casa es su casa.
You make an appointment whenever you have the time, just call me and I'll sit with you for 30 minutes. And I know you have a hectic schedule, and it may be more hectic after August. And what's going to happen, when a certain individual makes an announcement, you're going to even be more hectic. And we're not going to be able to call you. I can't call the directors. We're going to have problems.
Thank you, Councilman.
Do you have any other, you all set? Okay. Oh, anytime. Councilman Lucido.
Yes, Carlos, just an ongoing issue that's been happening in Weston Cranston over the last probably 5 or 6 weeks is the fact that the yard waste pickup hasn't been happening the same time as, the same day as trash pickup. I know Public Works has been addressing the issue, and they sat down and worked with Waste Management. I'm just seeing if there's an update, if that problem's solved. I guess they were shorthanded, and I know inclement weather was putting people behind the 8 ball. As of last week, I only got 4 complaints, which is 22 less that happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I know it's a citywide problem, so I don't know where we stand there, but if you can possibly give us an update.
Sure. Councilman Aceto, as you know, or may not know, the yard waste is unfortunately an annual problem that we deal with. And the way it works is Waste Management has 2 or 3 trucks that are available to them to do strictly yard waste. And naturally speaking, when they're out there, they fall behind because they either fill up because they're smaller trucks than the usual dump trucks. So by their very nature of how they operate, they fall behind. However, we, through Director Mason, have brought in Waste Management and taken them to the mat. And Director Mason was very aggressive in dealing with them, and they have assured us that they're going to stay on top of it. And in fact, they have worked most Saturdays to use it as a catch-up day. And as of right now, the call volume has really dropped off to a trickle. So right now, we're satisfied with the improved service that they're providing, and we will actively continue to monitor it. And if any constituent should call you with an issue, please let us know, because we're on them, and they went as far as to give us a new manager for our city because they were having some issues with prior people.
Mr. President, can I follow up with just another?
Sure. Go right ahead, Councilman.
Just based on what Councilman Stichels said about his 2 issues, I'm looking at the Cranston webpage, the front, we're on the move. There's a section that says hot topics. Well, maybe, the first one anyways, if we could post something on the rodent issue, and maybe down the line, since it's not that important, we can move some of these old things down and put, proper protocol for parking at Parkview. So, you can refer that we don't have to send an email, but they can come to the website and look at these issues. I mean, that would be helpful. I mean, I know, it's updated with the council meetings and meetings once a month, so I don't know, perhaps if we get somebody to do that, that would help the entire city.
Sure, and I think that's an excellent suggestion, Councilman, and we certainly can follow up with it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Council President?
Yes,
Can I
Councilman Santa
add
Maria.
one thing? I'm not on the agenda here, but could I ask Carlos just a quick question?
Make it quick.
Valenti Drive, the 2 houses.
Yes,
Closures.
Stan Pikel has sent an inspector out to those properties. They've been noticed, and we're waiting for the notice period to end. And more than likely, our Public Works Department is going to have to attack those properties and do the clean and then lean.
Not only the grass, but, I mean, there's broken up recycling bins. It looks deplorable. And anything on the pile of dirt that was sitting in the middle of the street?
Director Mason, I believe, has reached out to the person that put it there and told him to move it and get it off the city right away.
Okay. And just a quick comment on Councilman Stichels' concern. When I drive down the street in my neighborhood, at least every 10th house doesn't have a garbage can. They just leave the garbage out without a garbage can. Is that being monitored? I think they're supposed to have a garbage can. That's just asking for trouble, as far as I'm concerned. That's just something I noticed. But can we maybe get a knock on their door and tell them they really need to put it into a receptacle?
Our inspectors are out in the city, during normal work hours, and if they do see stuff like that, they do try to address it. However, do keep in mind that a lot of people take their garbage out after work hours, and when our inspectors, quite frankly, aren't out there. So we may see those type of things happen, but just bear in mind the limited time that our inspectors are available to monitor those type of situations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can I follow up on that, please?
Unless Councilman Vivekio had his hand up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had one quick thing, Council President, thank you. I just wanted to commend the fire department and Mr. Valletta and the administration on that issue with Coventry. Just so happened that on my way to the meeting tonight, I witnessed a rescue in progress in Garden City, and an elderly gentleman was taken by a stretcher into the ambulance, into the rescue. So I think that we need to, I think that's a good position for them to take, not to just service Coventry or any other city that just abuses that agreement.
Councilman Macedo.
Yeah, on this trash thing, Carlos, is it too much to ask Waste Management, I mean, as they're picking up the trash, I mean, they got to know there are bad situations without trash cans and stuff. Can't they make a note so that, somebody from the administration could call them and tell them and warn them in the problem, especially in the areas that we, have this rodent problem. I mean, they're our vendor. If we just, I know they're busy and they're trying to do 1 million houses a day or whatever, but if they make a note, that might be a way to help out. But I agree with Councilman Santa Maria. Even in my neck of the woods, there are people that are just putting the trash out, and it's just,
It's certainly something we can bring to their attention, especially since, we're going to be dealing with them in the near immediate future for the new contract. So we certainly can bring that to their attention.
Any other questions? Council member communications? Hearing none, moving on.
Thank you.
Is there any old business listed?
There's none.
Is there any new business?
There is proposed ordinance 6-13-01, ratifying the Teamsters, chauffeurs, warehousemen, and helpers of American Local Union 251 municipal employees, July 1, 2012 through June 30th, 2015, to be referred to Finance for hearing on July 11th. Proposed ordinance 6-13-02, an amendment of Title 8.51 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Health and Safety for Emergency Management Commission, to be referred to ordinance for hearing on July 11th. Proposed ordinance 6-13-03, an amendment of Title 8.08 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Health and Safety Fire Prevention Code for Fire Pits, to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on July 11th. Proposed ordinance 6-13-04, an amendment of Title 10, Chapter 32 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, from Macklin Street from Palmer Avenue to Suez, no through trucking, for hearing on October, to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on July 11th. Proposed ordinance 6-13-05, an amendment of Title 10, Chapter 32 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, no parking on Florida Avenue, West Side, to be referred to the Ordinance Committee for hearing on July 11th. Proposed ordinance 6-13-06, transferring appropriations and amending the budget for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2012 and ending June 30th, 2013, fourth quarter transfers, to be referred to the Finance Committee for hearing on July 11th. We also have the resolution that was earlier on the docket, which the committee is now being introduced as new business. A resolution of the City Council urging the members of the Rhode Island General Assembly to introduce and pass legislation authorizing the City of Cranston to be exempt from the provisions of Rhode Island General Laws 3-7-19 for 2170 Broad Street, to be referred to Safety Services for hearing on July 1st. And that's all the new business I have.
Is there a motion?
Motion to assign to the proper committees.
Second.
New business.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk? I would ask the administration on the status of Rhode Island DOT agreement. Right on.
Yes, Council President, that is currently in the hands of DOT. They were going to be signing that today, so we should be seeing it shortly.
Thank you. That's the council agenda for this evening. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are officially adjourned.